She smiled at him on their wedding night and never woke up the next morning. What secret was hidden behind that perfect smile? The man she trusted the most vanished, leaving only questions, fear, and a chilling truth waiting to be uncovered. The wedding hall emptied slowly, as if the night itself refused to let go of them. White petals clung to the floor, crushed under tired shoes, while the last song faded into silence. She stood beside her husband, smiling for strangers, her cheeks aching from hours of pretending happiness. The smile reached her lips but not her eyes. Her father watched from the doorway. He told himself he was imagining things, the stiffness in her shoulders, the way her fingers tightened around her bouquet. Fathers were supposed to worry. That was all this was. When he hugged her, she smelled of flowers and something metallic, like fear. She whispered that she loved him too quickly. The groom thanked everyone, confident and calm, his arm firm around her waist. To everyone else, he looked proud, victorious even. The father noticed how the grip didn't loosen when she shifted uncomfortably. No one else noticed. No one ever did. Outside, the night air was cold and sharp. Cameras flashed as the couple climbed into the car. She waved through the window, that same careful smile painted on her face. Her father raised his hand in return, a sudden weight pressing into his chest, heavy and unexplained. The drive was quiet. Streetlights slid across her face like passing thoughts. She rested her head against the window, watching reflections blur and disappear. The groom tapped the steering wheel, humming softly, as if nothing in the world had changed. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely there. He told her not to start now. At the apartment building, he went inside first. She lingered behind, fingers shaking as she reached for her phone. In the elevator mirror, she barely recognized herself, the dress, the jewelry, the woman trapped inside them. The doors opened. She did not move. She recorded a voice message, her breath uneven, words chosen carefully. She told her father she was tired, that she'd call tomorrow. Then her voice cracked. "If something feels wrong," she said, stopping herself before finishing the thought. Inside the building, the walls seemed to listen. Her footsteps echoed, slow and uncertain, as memories of laughter from the ceremony twisted into something darker. She thought of her father's face, the pride, the trust. She thought of the secret she had hidden, the truth she planned to tell him soon. Every step toward the apartment felt like surrender, each breath heavier than the last, hope thinning with the air. Fear followed her silently, pressing against her ribs, reminding her that love had already turned into a threat. The message sent. She slipped the phone into her purse and stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind her with a dull click. Inside the apartment, raised voices broke the silence. Down the street, her father stared at his phone as it vibrated once, then went still. He never played the message. By morning, the door would remain locked, and the smile would be the last thing anyone remembered. Morning came without answers. The father woke before dawn, the unease from the night before lodged deep in his chest. He checked his phone again, hoping the missed call icon had been a mistake. No new messages, no call back. The silence felt deliberate, almost cruel. He drove to the apartment as the city stretched awake around him. Traffic lights blinked lazily, unaware of the urgency inside him. The building stood quiet, ordinary, untouched by whatever had happened behind its walls. He climbed the stairs faster than his age allowed and stopped in front of the door. He knocked once. Then again, nothing. He called his daughter's name, his voice echoing down the hallway. No movement, no response. His hand shook as he tried the handle, locked from the inside. A chill crept up his spine, sharp and certain. This was no sleeping late. This was something else. The police arrived with practiced calm. They asked questions he couldn't fully hear, their voices muffled by the pounding in his head. One officer pressed an ear to the door. Another exchanged a look that said more than words. Permission was granted. The lock broke with a sound that felt final. The smell hit first, something sour beneath the familiar scent of flowers. They moved slowly, calling out, weapons drawn. The bedroom door stood half open. She lay on the floor, still dressed in white, jewelry scattered like fallen promises. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. The father fell to his knees before anyone could stop him. He reached for her hand, cold and unresponsive, and a sound escaped him that didn't feel human. An officer gently pulled him back. They covered her with a blanket that could not erase what had been done. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken windows, no struggle that suggested an intruder. The room told a quieter, more terrifying story. This had happened between people who knew each other, people who shared a key. They searched for the groom. His phone lay abandoned on the kitchen counter. His wallet was gone, his car missing. The bed was untouched, as if sleep had never been part of the night. On the dresser, investigators found a small object smeared with blood, something the groom had owned for years. The words no one wanted to say were finally spoken. The husband was now a suspect. The man who promised to protect her had vanished into the morning. As the body was taken away, the father stood frozen, replaying the last smile he had seen. Outside, neighbors gathered, whispering. Somewhere between grief and shock, a new question formed, heavy and relentless. If the door was locked from the inside, how had love turned into murder so quickly? And where had the husband gone? An officer quietly mentioned the time of death, placing it shortly after midnight. The father's knees nearly gave way. Hours ago, she had been alive, breathing, hoping. Now everything pointed inward, toward a marriage that had lasted less than a night. As sirens faded outside, one truth settled inescapably. Whatever happened behind that locked door was only the beginning of a far darker story. Answers waited behind the husband's disappearance. As noon approached, the groom's absence was no longer a question but a fact. Officers spread through the city, retracing the last confirmed sighting. A camera near the apartment garage showing him driving out before sunrise, face unreadable, suit jacket still on. He had not called family, friends, or work. To those who knew him, it felt impossible. He was reliable, charming, the man who never missed an obligation. Yet the evidence said he chose disappearance over explanation, leaving grief and suspicion behind in equal measure. The morning wedding photos still played on phones, mocking investigators with smiles that now felt staged. As if joy itself had been rehearsed for an audience that would soon demand answers from a missing groom. Detectives interviewed guests from the reception, peeling back the image layer by layer. Everyone remembered the groom as attentive, affectionate, almost perfect. He danced, toasted, laughed at the right moments, but cracks appeared under careful questioning. A waiter recalled a whispered argument near the exit. A cousin noticed the bride crying alone in the restroom. Small details, dismissed then, now burned with meaning. Police mapped timelines, syncing testimonies with footage, discovering gaps where truth bent under fear or loyalty. Each recollection nudged suspicion closer to the man who should have been grieving, not running from the first night of marriage. Leaving a trail of doubt behind his practiced smile and borrowed vows that rang hollow now. Everywhere, always loudly enough. The investigation turned inward toward the groom's past. Financial records showed recent withdrawals, quiet but deliberate. A storage unit rented weeks earlier raised eyebrows. His phone left behind revealed erased messages and one unsent draft never finished. Detectives sensed preparation, not panic. This wasn't a man who snapped. This was someone who planned. Friends described him as controlled, disciplined, allergic to chaos. Investigators wondered if control extended to marriage itself, a ceremony masking a decision already made. The timing felt cruelly precise, the disappearance too clean. Every answer uncovered only deepened the absence, as though he had stepped out of his own life just before it demanded accountability from him, and from everyone else left behind to ask why now. The father listened from the hallway as officers spoke in careful tones. Each update landed like a second loss. The man who married his daughter had become a stranger overnight, slipping into shadows without leaving a goodbye. Anger joined grief, sharp and focused. He replayed memories, searching for signs he should have seen, moments where concern might have saved her. Questions haunted him. What did the groom discover and when? What truth had pushed him to run instead of face the consequences? The locked door returned in his mind, a symbol of secrets sealed too tightly. Somewhere the husband was breathing, hiding, carrying knowledge that now defined the investigation and the father's purpose, transforming mourning into resolve that demanded answers. As night fell, a patrol car spotted the groom's vehicle on a quiet side street, abandoned but intact. Inside, nothing personal remained. No notes, no blood, just absence. Detectives exchanged looks that mixed relief with dread. Finding the car meant he was closer than they thought. It also meant he was still moving. Somewhere ahead, the husband was choosing his next step, unaware that his vanishing act had already rewritten him as a suspect, not a survivor. The search widened, tension tightening with every mile. By dawn, someone would find something he didn't intend to leave behind, and the story would turn, dragging his past into the light he had tried so carefully to escape. That discovery would change everything. Grief settled into the father like a second spine, stiff and unyielding. After the abandoned car was logged and towed away, the investigation moved outward, but he moved inward, retreating into memory. Sleep came in fragments. When it did, it carried images of his daughter as a child, running toward him with scraped knees and absolute trust. Waking felt like betrayal, as if remaining alive meant failing her again. He returned to his house and found it unchanged, every room frozen at the moment she left for the wedding. Her childhood bedroom smelled faintly of dust and perfume. On the dresser stood a framed photo of them from years earlier, her head resting on his shoulder. He stared at it, searching her face for warnings he might have missed, signals hidden in smiles. The guilt began quietly, then grew teeth. He remembered the first time she mentioned the groom, how carefully she chose her words. He had liked the man immediately. Reliable job, polite manners. No scandals. Approval had come easily, lazily even. He recalled the engagement dinner, the groom's hand always resting on her back, guiding her answers, finishing her sentences. At the time, it felt protective. Now it felt rehearsed. The father wondered how often he had mistaken control for care. Police questions echoed in his head long after they left. Had she ever expressed fear? Did she talk about arguments? Any signs of abuse? Each no he gave felt like another failure signed in ink. He replayed their last conversation, the rushed goodbye, her eyes flicking toward her husband before she spoke. He had sensed something then. He had ignored it. Love made liars of good men, including fathers. That evening he finally played the voice message. Her voice sounded small, stretched thin by effort. She talked around what she wanted to say, wrapping fear and exhaustion. When she paused, he held his breath, waiting for her to continue. She never did. The message ended with a soft click, leaving him staring at the wall as if it might answer him back. His chest tightened with the knowledge that he had been given a chance to listen, and he had waited too long. He sat on the edge of the bed until the room darkened. The world outside moved on, indifferent, while his thoughts sharpened into accusation. Against the groom, against the system, mostly against himself. A father was supposed to protect. He had walked her down the aisle and handed her to a man he barely knew. The ritual now felt obscene. Near midnight, he began opening drawers, not searching for anything specific, just needing motion to survive the stillness. In her closet, he found a small box tucked behind old scarves. Inside lay folded pages, handwritten, careful and dense. His hands trembled as he unfolded the first sheet. The words were hers, private, afraid. As he read, a different grief took shape, heavier than the first. This was the part of her life she had lived alone, carrying secrets he never earned the right to hear. The guilt sharpened into resolve. Whatever the truth was, he would face it. Whatever it cost, he would not look away again. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, pulling the investigation forward. Inside the room, the father realized the answers he needed might already be in his hands. Each line tightened the knot in his chest, confirming fears he had buried. The marriage, the silence, the sudden death connected into a pattern he could no longer deny, one that would soon force him to confront the groom's past. The pages felt heavier than paper should, as if the weight came not from ink, but from everything his daughter had carried alone. The father sat on the floor beside the bed, reading slowly, afraid that rushing might somehow erase her voice. Each entry was dated, spaced weeks apart, her handwriting neat, controlled, trying to sound calm even when the words trembled underneath. At first, the journal spoke of love, how attentive he was, how safe she felt when he held her hand in public. But even in those early lines, caution lingered. She wrote about small rules presented as concern, which friends were bad influences, which dresses drew unnecessary attention, which conversations should stay private. She told herself compromise was normal. Marriage required adjustment. The father felt a familiar ache. He had taught her to be kind, to keep peace. He wondered when kindness had turned into silence. As the entries continued, the tone shifted. Love became obligation. Affection became expectation. He criticized her memory, questioned her reactions, corrected her version of events until she doubted herself. She wrote about apologizing for things she couldn't remember doing, about feeling watched even when alone, about fear disguised as responsibility. The father clenched his jaw, recognizing manipulation too late. One entry described the night she tried to speak up. She wrote that he listened quietly, nodding, letting her believe she was being heard. Then he told her she was imagining things. That stress made people dramatic. That she needed him more than she realized. The argument ended with an apology, hers. Reading it, the father felt something inside him fracture. This was how control survived, not through violence at first, but through erosion. Further in, the writing grew urgent. She mentioned discovering financial documents she didn't understand, accounts opened in her name, signatures that looked like hers but weren't. She questioned him once. He smiled and told her marriage meant shared responsibility. He warned her not to misunderstand loyalty. She wrote that night she slept in her wedding dress, afraid to change, afraid to ask why fear felt safer than honesty. Near the final pages, the truth sharpened. She had found evidence of another woman, not recent but buried deep. Photos, messages, then silence. She wrote that the woman had vanished years ago, erased from his life as if she had never existed. When she confronted him, his calm cracked for the first time. He didn't deny it. He asked how much she knew. His voice frightened her more than anger would have. The last entry was short. The pen pressed hard enough to tear the page. She wrote that she planned to tell her father everything, that she couldn't carry the secret anymore. That the wedding was a mistake she couldn't undo, but truth might still save her. She ended with a sentence unfinished, the ink trailing off as if interrupted. The father closed the journal, his hands shaking. He understood now why she sounded afraid in the voice message. She hadn't been tired, she had been preparing. Preparing to survive or preparing to be honest, knowing the cost could be unbearable. The realization hollowed him out. This wasn't a sudden crime. It was the final act of a story written slowly, deliberately. Outside, rain began tapping against the window, soft but relentless. The father wiped his eyes and stood, the journal held tight against his chest. He knew the police needed this. He also knew giving it up meant surrendering the last private pieces of his daughter's life. Still, truth mattered more than comfort. As he reached for his coat, one thought settled with chilling clarity. If there was another woman before his daughter, there could be more. And somewhere, the groom was running not just from murder, but from a past that was about to resurface. Dragging forgotten names into the light and widening the case far beyond a single locked door. The journal changed the direction of the investigation overnight. When the father handed it to detectives, the room fell silent, each page turning into a confession that spoke even without a voice. One name appeared repeatedly near the end, written, crossed out, then written again. It belonged to a woman no one in the current case had mentioned before. Not a friend, not family. Someone from the groom's past. Detectives dug quietly at first. Old addresses, employment records, social media accounts abandoned years earlier. The woman existed vividly once, then stopped. Her digital trail ended abruptly, as if someone had simply erased her. She had been engaged to the groom nearly 6 years earlier, wedding plans announced, photos shared, then nothing. The engagement was quietly called off, explained away as mutual and private. No missing person report had ever been filed. People assumed she moved on. People assumed wrong. They tracked down her last known roommate, now living across the state. The woman hesitated before speaking, fear still clinging after all these years. She said the former fiancé had grown distant near the end, paranoid even. She stopped answering calls, stopped trusting people. One night she packed a small bag and left, saying she needed space. She never came back. Her phone was later found wiped and abandoned. The groom had handled everything after, calm and efficient, convincing everyone there was no reason to worry. The pattern tightened. Investigators compared timelines, behaviors, financial activity. The groom had closed shared accounts shortly after the disappearance. He changed jobs, moved cities, reinvented himself. No violence reported, no body found, just absence. It mirrored the present case too closely to ignore. What once looked like coincidence now looked deliberate. Forensic analysts reopened archived data. A partial DNA sample from an unrelated storage unit search years earlier resurfaced. never matched at the time. When compared against new evidence collected from the groom's belongings, the result came back undeniable. The same person had touched both scenes. The case shifted from tragedy to pattern, from crime of passion to something far colder. The father listened as detectives explained what they were uncovering. Another woman, another silence. His grief twisted into something darker, more focused. His daughter hadn't been the beginning, she had been the continuation. The realization sickened him. Somewhere another family might still be waiting, believing absence meant choice, not violence. Investigators began reconstructing the groom's psychology. Control, patience, selection. He didn't explode. He erased, he chose moments when truth threatened him most. Engagements, weddings. Commitments that required exposure. Love was the trap, not the motive. Marriage was where secrets became dangerous. A press conference followed, careful but firm. Authorities acknowledged a prior case under renewed investigation, urging anyone with information about the groom's former fiancée to come forward. Phones began ringing within hours. Old co-workers, former neighbors, people who remembered uneasy moments they had dismissed. The past, once buried, refused to stay silent. That night, alone again, the father stared at the journal resting on the table. Two women bound by the same man, separated by years but joined by fate. He felt the weight of responsibility expand beyond his daughter. Justice was no longer personal, it was necessary. Miles away, unaware of the full extent of what had been uncovered, the groom watched a news report flicker on a muted television. His name scrolled across the screen beneath the words "Person of Interest." For the first time since disappearing, his calm wavered. The woman he thought erased had returned through memory and evidence. The story he had buried was breathing again. He turned off the screen, grabbed his bag, and stepped back into the night. The lie beneath his love had cracked wide open, and he knew the next mistake would be his last. The news reports followed the groom like a shadow, even when he avoided screens. He felt the pressure of exposure tightening, the careful life he built beginning to fracture. For years, love had been his safest disguise. He studied people, learned their weaknesses, mirrored their desires. Affection made them lower their guard. Commitment made them silent. When truth threatened him, he didn't argue. He removed the threat. Investigators now understood this pattern clearly. They traced how he inserted himself into lives quietly, becoming indispensable before becoming dominant. He never demanded control outright. He framed it as protection, guidance, loyalty. By the time fear appeared, it was tangled with dependence. The women believed they needed him to survive the very world he warned them about. Detectives revisited interviews with this lens. Old statements shifted meaning. Compliments sounded rehearsed. Alibis felt curated. The groom's relationships were not partnerships but performances, staged until exposure loomed. Marriage, investigators realized, was not romance for him. It was leverage. Legal, emotional, financial. A way to bind someone so tightly that leaving became unthinkable. The father absorbed these findings with a numb intensity. He remembered the groom's wedding speech, the way his voice softened when he spoke of trust. The words now felt weaponized. His daughter had been trapped inside a narrative designed to erase her doubts. The lie wasn't a single secret, it was the entire relationship. Psychologists consulted on the case used careful language, but their conclusions aligned. The groom displayed traits of calculated narcissism, an obsession with image, and an intolerance for exposure. When control slipped, he acted decisively. Not in rage, but in preservation. Love was never the motive, it was the method. Police followed financial trails leading to temporary housing, cash payments, places chosen for anonymity. Each step suggested foresight. He wasn't running blindly. He was relocating, adapting, shedding identities like skin. The abandoned car had been deliberate misdirection, buying time while attention scattered. Meanwhile, the father replayed the journal again and again, haunted by how clearly the pattern fit his daughter's words. Her fear had been logical. Her silence had been learned. He wondered how many times the groom had watched her struggle and chosen advantage over mercy. The thought hardened something inside him. Grief sharpened into purpose. A break came when a clerk at a roadside motel recognized the groom from the press briefing. He'd paid cash, stayed one night, left before sunrise. Surveillance footage confirmed it. The trail was fresh. The hunter and the hunted were finally moving along the same line. Authorities coordinated quietly, avoiding public updates that might push him further underground. They believed he was tiring, the strain of constant movement eroding his composure. People like him thrived on control. Flight was unsustainable. Eventually, he would need to confront something he couldn't manipulate. That something came sooner than expected. A message was sent to the groom's phone, triggered remotely. It contained only one line, carefully chosen, pulled from the journal. "I was going to tell my father." The words struck deeper than threats ever could. He stopped walking. For the first time, panic surfaced. The lie beneath his love had been exposed, not just to police, but to the man who loved her without conditions. Somewhere behind him, the past was closing in. Somewhere ahead, there was nowhere left to hide. As night settled, patrol cars converged on the last known location, lights dark, engines low. The next encounter would not be an interview or a search. It would be a reckoning. The man who vanished was about to be found, and the truth he ran from would finally have a voice. Sirens stayed silent as the patrol cars closed in, tires whispering against wet asphalt. The groom stood beneath a flickering streetlight, phone still glowing in his hand, breath shallow, shoulders tight. When officers stepped forward, weapons lowered but ready, he didn't run. He raised his hands slowly, expression smoothing into practiced calm. The arrest was quiet, almost respectful, as if noise might shatter something fragile. He asked for a moment, straightened his jacket, then turned toward the approaching figure he hadn't expected to see. The father stepped into the light, grief etched deep, eyes steady, refusing to look away now. They stood facing each other while officers watched from a careful distance, aware this was more than procedure. The father felt his legs tremble but remained upright, anchored by anger and love intertwined. He searched the groom's face for remorse and found calculation instead. The groom spoke first, voice controlled, apologetic without sorrow. He said things had gone wrong, that fear had taken over, that nothing was meant to end this way. Each word felt rehearsed. The father interrupted once, asking a single question about his daughter's last moments, and silence answered louder than confession. The night held its breath. The groom finally admitted killing her, not with rage but necessity as he described it. He claimed she discovered everything and threatened exposure, leaving him no choice. He spoke as though explaining logistics, not life taken. The father's hands curled into fists, nails biting skin, as disbelief gave way to fury. He lunged forward before officers restrained him, a sound tearing from his chest. The groom didn't flinch. He simply watched, eyes cold, and added that someone else had pushed him, someone whose name he refused to say aloud, yet hinting control extended far beyond this night alone somewhere else. The father was pulled back, breath ragged, vision blurring with tears he refused to shed. He demanded to know who held that power, who taught him cruelty. The groom smiled faintly, a gesture that felt like another violation. He said love was never enough, that people only understood consequences. Officers exchanged uneasy glances as the psychological depth surfaced. This was not a crime born in chaos, but design. The groom asked if the father truly wanted the truth, warning that knowing it would destroy more than one life, and then he fell silent, leaving the night heavy with unanswered dread. The ride to the station passed in suffocating quiet. The father watched the groom through the divider, studying the man who stole his daughter's future. He searched for cracks for humanity, but found only patience. At the station, under fluorescent lights, the groom requested a lawyer and leaned back, composed. Detectives prepared for interrogation, aware this would be a battle of endurance. Outside the room, the father sat alone, replaying every warning he missed, knowing answers were coming but fearing what those answers might demand of him next. As dawn threatened to expose every secret still hidden inside their lives. Interrogation began without ceremony. Questions circled finances, relationships, timelines. The groom responded selectively, calm eroding slightly when the former fiancé was mentioned. His jaw tightened, eyes flickering with something close to regret. Detectives pressed harder, presenting evidence piece by piece, watching his defenses strain. He accused them of misunderstanding, of constructing narratives. Yet when shown the journal excerpts, his composure finally cracked. He looked down, whispered that she forced his hand, then corrected himself, saying truth forced everyone eventually. The room felt colder after that admission, as if the past had entered and refused to leave them alone anymore now. When it ended, detectives stepped out, faces grim. The groom leaned back alone, breathing slower, calculating again. The father rose unsteadily, knowing the confrontation was over but the damage permanent. Confession had opened doors that could never close. Somewhere within records and testimony lay proof of everything he'd done, and more. As officers prepared charges, the father understood this was no longer about one night. It was about patterns, about power, about justice unfolding slowly. The next chapter would drag the groom's entire past into court, where truth demanded payment. And every secret would finally face public judgment together soon. The room smelled of stale coffee and fluorescent lights. The father sat just outside the interrogation room, hands folded tightly in his lap, listening through the thin glass walls as detectives asked questions the groom tried to dodge. Every word he uttered revealed not only his actions but his mind, and it was more frightening than the crime itself. The father realized that the man who had seemed charming, protective, and loving was nothing more than a careful manipulator. Power, not affection, had defined every choice he made. Inside, the groom explained calmly how he controlled his life and the lives of the women who trusted him. He described the rules he set, the small punishments disguised as advice, the isolation of friends and family that made them dependent on him. He spoke of emotional withdrawal, compliments carefully timed to keep trust intact, and fear introduced subtly, only enough to bend their behavior but never enough to alert outsiders. Love, he said, was convenient, a tool to keep someone compliant. The father's stomach churned as he listened. This was not passion, it was architecture, deliberate, cold, and relentless. Psychologists called in for consultation analyzed every detail. They described traits consistent with obsessive narcissism and extreme need for control. He didn't act rashly or violently at first. He studied, he waited. He understood weaknesses, calculated risks, and struck only when exposure threatened him. The groom's calm, the precision of the murder, the manipulation of his bride, all fit a pattern that extended far beyond that night. Each revelation tightened the knot of anger and grief in the father's chest. This man had not just taken a life, he had taken agency, choice, safety, trust. The detectives pressed further, asking about prior relationships. The groom's jaw tightened slightly, eyes darting momentarily before returning to that same practiced neutrality. He admitted to past manipulations, careful with words to minimize blame, never naming names fully, implying instead that others had failed too, families, friends, and institutions that had allowed him to operate. Each admission created a ripple of implications. His skill was systemic, embedded in every relationship he touched. Power, not love, had always been the engine driving his life. Outside, the father replayed memories he had once dismissed. Birthday parties, family gatherings, and even wedding speeches now carried new meaning. He saw the grooming for what it was: patience masked as devotion, attention masked as concern. Every kind gesture had been calculated, every smile weighed against the control it produced. The truth clawed at him. He had unknowingly handed his daughter to a man whose skill in domination made murder inevitable when she resisted. Back inside the interrogation room, the groom smirked faintly when asked about the bride's journal. He admitted reading it briefly, recognizing her intention to expose him. His voice softened as if regret might justify survival, saying, "She should have known that honesty has consequences. Some truths are too dangerous." The detectives recorded everything, but the words stung far more when imagined in the ears of the father, whose daughter had learned this lesson too late. The father's hands shook as he held onto the edge of the chair. The groom's calm, the explanations, the casual manipulation, it was unbearable. Power had always been the hidden partner in their marriage. Not love, not trust. Just control, precise and absolute, the kind that left no room for choice, no room for survival once resistance appeared. His daughter had been caught in the grip of a man who treated lives as puzzles, pieces to be moved or removed. By evening, the interrogation ended, and the father finally entered the room, eyes locking with the groom's. For the first time, he saw fatigue beneath the mask, subtle cracks in a persona perfected for years. But he also understood something terrifying. Control was instinct. Even exposed, the groom's power over people, over perception, and over consequence remained formidable. The father left the room knowing that the courtroom, not this confrontation, would be the stage where real accountability would be tested. And somewhere in the coming days, the full scale of the groom's manipulations, his network of secrets and lies, would finally be revealed, leaving no doubt about who truly held power all along. The courtroom was heavy with anticipation, a tension that felt almost physical. Reporters crowded the back rows, cameras clicking quietly, capturing each expression, each word. The father sat near the front, hands folded tightly, jaw set. He had come prepared to hear the truth, but no one could prepare for the way it would feel when it arrived clothed in legal jargon and testimony. Justice, he realized, was messy, layered, and slower than grief demanded. The prosecution opened with a chronological retelling of the wedding night. Evidence was presented piece by piece: the locked door, the surveillance footage, the abandoned car, the journal. Each piece landed like a hammer blow to the story the groom had tried to control, exposing patterns of manipulation, deception, and premeditation. The courtroom listened in silent shock, the father gripping his daughter's chair as if holding her memory alive in his hands. Witnesses were called. Friends, neighbors, and co-workers described the groom's charm, his controlling tendencies, the subtle manipulations that had gone unnoticed by everyone until it was too late. Their words painted a picture of calculated affection, of a man who observed and adapted, whose smiles hid intentions sharper than knives. The father felt both vindicated and crushed. His daughter's warnings, ignored and unseen, had finally been echoed by others, but she was not there to witness them. When the groom testified, he remained calm, collected, even as evidence stacked against him. He admitted parts of the crime, choosing his words carefully, suggesting coercion and fear had forced his hand. Every word was a calculated measure, designed to minimize responsibility while maintaining control over perception. The father's hands clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. He realized justice wasn't about catharsis. It was about truth, and truth was often unsatisfying, painful, incomplete. The jury listened intently as forensic experts described the evidence. DNA, fingerprints, and timeline analyses were presented in meticulous detail. Each point was a thread unraveling the carefully constructed life of the groom. Outside, the media speculated on motives, past relationships, and prior manipulations. The father ignored the chatter, focusing instead on the quiet moments, the voice messages, the journal, the last smile she had given him before the door closed forever. Those were pieces of evidence no court could hold, yet they carried more weight than any scientific analysis. Arguments moved into emotional territory as the defense tried to frame the groom's actions as reactionary, a desperate measure triggered by unforeseen circumstances. The father felt nausea at the manipulation of language, the effort to rewrite intent into something palatable. But the prosecution countered, methodically tracing the groom's history, revealing patterns that left no room for doubt. It became clear that murder was not spontaneous. It was the culmination of years of control, preparation, and calculation. After hours of testimony, closing arguments began. The father listened as lawyers summarized the case, trying to frame the narrative in terms of responsibility, morality, and consequence. Each word landed like a verdict before the official one arrived. He understood something fundamental. Justice could not undo death, could not restore lost innocence, could not erase grief. It could only acknowledge truth, impose accountability, and remind the world that actions, no matter how calculated, bore consequences. Finally, the jury withdrew. Silence descended on the courtroom, heavy and unbearable. The father closed his eyes, imagining the last moments of his daughter's life, her fear, her courage, her attempt to survive. When the verdict returned hours later, it was not relief that washed over him, but a strange, hollow clarity. Justice had been done in form and law, but it was imperfect, incomplete, and jagged, as justice always is. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Inside, the father carried grief like a silent burden, knowing that the courtroom had revealed the truth but could never restore what had been lost, and that the next chapter, beyond verdicts, would test the resilience of memory, morality, and healing. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving behind the echo of gavel strikes and hushed conversations. The father lingered, eyes fixed on the empty seat where his daughter should have been. The verdict had been delivered, the law had spoken, and yet the silence in the room screamed louder than any judgment. Justice, formal and undeniable, could not bring back the warmth of her laughter, the softness of her voice, or the last smile she had given him. It could only mark the moment when the truth was finally known. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the gravity of lives forever changed within the walls of the courthouse. Reporters huddled in groups, cameras rolling, voices overlapping in questions no one could fully answer. The father walked slowly to his car, the journal tucked under his arm like a talisman. He had read it countless times, each word a reminder of her thoughts, fears, and courage. The words that once weighed him down now felt like a bridge, connecting him to her even in absence. Back at home, he moved through the apartment carefully, each room heavy with memories. Her belongings remained untouched, as if pausing the moment in time. He lingered in her room, sitting on the edge of her bed, tracing the lines of handwriting in the journal once more. Tears fell silently, unbidden. He whispered apologies aloud, for every time he had doubted, for every smile he hadn't fully understood, for every moment he had failed to protect her. Words meant nothing, yet they were all he had. The media frenzy faded slowly, leaving space for reflection. The father realized that the trial had unveiled the groom's past manipulations, his calculated patterns of control, and his cold precision. Yet it had also revealed something more important, his daughter's courage. She had tried to speak, to warn, to protect herself and others. Her voice, though silenced too soon, had endured in writing and memory. It became a quiet force, reminding the father that her life had meaning beyond the tragedy, a proof that even in fear she had fought for truth. Friends and family began to visit, offering comfort that felt fragile but necessary. They brought stories of her childhood, of laughter, small victories, and daily moments that defined her life beyond the wedding night. The father listened, sometimes speaking, often silent, holding onto fragments of memory as though they could form a shield against despair. He understood that grief would never fully leave, but it could coexist with remembrance, with acknowledgement, with love that persisted beyond the confines of mortality. In the weeks that followed, the father returned to ordinary routines, but with a changed perspective. Simple tasks, walking down familiar streets, reading the newspaper, answering phone calls, carried new weight. Every decision seemed layered with consequence, every interaction a reminder of the fragility of trust and the hidden power of manipulation. He studied the journal again, not for answers, but for understanding, piecing together the complex mosaic of her life and the forces that had shaped it. He also began to plan for the future. Memorials, charitable contributions, acts of remembrance, each choice intentional, each act a way to honor the truth she had carried and the courage she had shown. Slowly, he allowed himself to imagine life beyond despair, imagining her smiles and the small victories of everyday moments, imagining her voice cheering him forward, even from absence. At night, he would sit by the window, looking out at the city lights, replaying fragments of her last days. The fear, the courage, the silences, and the words she never spoke aloud, all of it became a living memory, fragile but unbroken. Though the husband had vanished from her life, and the truth had arrived too late to save her, the father found a strange solace in understanding. He realized that while justice had been served, the human heart carried its own reckoning, one that demanded healing, remembrance, and the quiet promise that her story, her real story, would never be forgotten. The wind whispered against the glass, and he allowed himself, for the first time since the tragedy, a small, bitter smile. Life continued, grief persisted, but truth had finally arrived. And in that truth, he could carry her forward, piece by piece, memory by memory, into the days yet to come.